I'm Slave Rooks, and it is my pleasure and privilege to be speaking with one of the owners of the Baltimore Eagle, Charles King. And did you want to also talk about your other co-owners?
Sure. There are two other co-owners besides myself. It's my husband, Gregory King. He does our administration, our web design, and our accounting and ticket sales. And then there's Robert Gasser. He is head of our food service program. And then myself, I'm the general manager, and I basically oversee all the departments and handle all special events and private parties, things like that.
Okay, so actually I realized I want to start from a little bit into your beginnings personally. So how did you actually find your way into the leather community? I heard there was a little bit of a fun story behind that, perhaps?
I'm not sure where you heard that story. My very first experience in the leather community, I was living in Los Angeles, and I worked at a department store, and I was in the men's furnishings department of, it was called the Broadway department store. I don't think it's around anymore. I think Macy's absorbed them or something. And I was 20 years old. I had a fake ID, and the suit department manager, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a leather guy, and so was another guy that worked in my department. And that guy's name was Sam, and he had this bright red hair, this bright red mustache, and it was like fire orange red.
Right.
So they had kind of got it out of me that I was sort of interested in just the idea of Leathermen, and so they decided they were going to take me to my first leather bar. So it was like I don't know, Friday night or something, and we all decided we were going to meet at some Mexican restaurant in Silver Lake, and we were going to go to the Gauntlet. And unfortunately the Gauntlet is no longer there, but that was my first leather bar experience. So we went to the Mexican restaurant, and it was, David was his name, the guy from the suit department. He and I met there, and I said, well, where's Sam? And he said, oh, Sam will meet us at the bar. So I said, okay, no problem. So we ate our food, and we proceeded to go to the bar. Now they told me what to wear, and I think I had like jeans on and a t-shirt, and I think I had maybe some tennis shoes on. Like I didn't even have a pair of boots at the time. So I was petrified and went into the Gauntlet, and it was an amazing place. I mean, actually I think it was a Saturday night. It was filled with leather men. I mean, it was my dream come true. And walked in the door. David said, I'm gonna go get a drink. What do you want? And I was like, whatever, just give me a beer. So he let me stand against the wall, and I remember it was a very long room, and the bar was sort of in the middle of the room, and there was lots of space between the bar and the wall, and people would kind of stand against the wall and just cruise. And I was like in the middle of other leather guys, just completely freaking out, but going, this is my space,
Right.
And so this Leatherman comes walking by, and he's walking, and he's got glasses on, and he's got the master cap, and he's got the whole, leather, shirt and vest and pants, the whole bit. And he stops right in front of me, and he looks at me and he says, "What's up, boy?" And I was completely shitting myself, going, like, what do I say? And I'm like, nothing. How you doing? And then all of a sudden he pulled off his sunglasses and he goes, hey, it's Sam. And it was the other guy from the department store. So that was my very first introduction to the leather world. And it was great because it really allowed me to sort of have a sense of humor about the whole thing, which is what I've learned down the road is very important in this world. But yeah, that was my first experience.
It sounds like you met a very sexy ginger friend.
Yeah, absolutely. He was. I didn't even know what ginger meant back then, but but yeah, I miss the Gauntlet. Silver Lake, I think, is really a different place today than it was back in the early '90s when I went there. I think they still have the Fault Line is open, and I think the Eagle in Los Angeles is open, but it's a very different place. So right. Yeah.
Coming back to it, so then after you found this like energizing like life within the leather community, what made you want to get into like leadership or bar ownership at this point?
So when I obviously that was my first job living in Los Angeles. I later moved on to work for CBS TV, just in like the testing department. We worked with like The Price is Right and stuff like that, testing TV shows and getting their audience members to come and watch stuff and tell us if it was good or bad. And I eventually moved to Las Vegas, got into the casino industry, management, and all that kind of stuff. Worked for really high-end hotels and learned a lot about customer service and learned a lot about how to manage properly and how to take care of your staff and employees, and so slowly moved up. Also still bartending, nightclubs, restaurants, all that stuff. Basically over the next 25 years, essentially. Moved to Phoenix, Arizona later on. Eventually moved to the East Coast. And then when I moved to the East Coast, is the first time I was actually a GM of a nightclub. That was up in Pennsylvania, and I did that for 4.5 years. And still bartending at catering companies and doing different things. It was really training for myself, essentially, to lead up to where I am today. And I think I had a really great background in service and the service industry and everything that it entails to make sure that you have something that your customer really wants and loves and wants to come back to. That's where I learned all of that. So.
Established in Baltimore, had you met your partners prior to wanting to launch the Eagle, or?
So it's a very interesting story. My husband and I, we've been married for over 8 years. It'll actually be 8 years in November. We've been together for 10 years, not married. So we met in Pennsylvania. The last place I ever thought I was going to meet somebody was in Pennsylvania. It was just supposed to be like a temporary thing, and I won't get into that whole story, but we met through a fundraising opportunity that he wanted to do for an LGBTQ community center in Pennsylvania. So we wanted to do an event at the nightclub that I was managing up in Pennsylvania. And we met through that and sort of started dating and fell in love and whatever. And we moved to Baltimore because I convinced him that he was really a city boy, but he didn't know it. And because he's very smart and intelligent and very, he's really cultured, believe it or not. Actually, he never went to a lick of college, but he probably has a vocabulary which is 10 times bigger than mine. And it annoys me that way. But he is the type of person that when he goes to find some information, he'll find it no matter what. And if he doesn't know the answer, he'll make sure he gets the answer. Whereas I'm kind of like, tell me the answer, because I don't have the time to go and look for the answer. So just tell it to me, right? So we're really good compliments that way. But he grew up in a small town, and I grew up in a big city. I grew up in Milwaukee and moved to LA, and so I convinced him to come to Baltimore. He fell in love with Baltimore, and I didn't think I was going to love Baltimore, but I actually really do. It's a really blue-collar-esque type city with that sort of attitude, and everyone's very friendly, and it's got neighborhoods and really cool culture that you wouldn't find in a lot of cities. So we moved here. I was working for one of the casinos. He was working for his own company up in Pennsylvania. He eventually sold that, but this opportunity fell in my lap. So I called him about it, and he said, "Oh, you're crazy. This ain't gonna happen." And he said, "Where are you gonna get the money to do this?" So I called somebody else and just started making some phone calls. And I think within 48 hours, we had an investor and the beginning of an idea. Then we met with our two other business partners. One of them is no longer with us, unfortunately. He decided to get out of the company. And they sort of are divorcing, unfortunately. But the four of us at the time had went to the beach, and we sat down and locked ourselves in a room for a couple of days to get a business plan down, and then that's how we sort of made it happen.
The fact that you now have this massive space and establishment that I don't know how else to describe it other than it seems that it's very multifaceted. Yeah. And it seems to dip into other interests and realms in the community. So it's kind of a two-part question is how has the response been from other groups in the community? And also, since there seems to be such an easy available access then to leather culture here, have you noticed anyone from other groups necessarily getting more into leather because of the proximity of having an awesome sexy code bar in the space of seeing that history you have up on the wall?
Well, that's a big question. So
Let's break it in piecemeal.
the first part of it is, I mean, we're the foundation of who we are is a leather bar. That's who we are, is we're Leathermen, and we are proud of that, but through and through. And we knew that we wanted to have a bar that featured leather, or that it was about leather, but we also knew that we had to diversify and we had to offer more than just a leather bar, because we wouldn't survive. We wouldn't be able to have 3 owners, trying to live off of the, whatever profits there would be, to survive on salaries, and then not, to have a large staff. It just couldn't happen. So we envisioned a large place that would employ a lot of people, which we do. We between our full-time, part-time staff, entertainers, DJs, everything else, we employ about 75 people, which is a lot. It's a lot to be responsible for, and we're real happy about that. But full-time staff and part-time staff, I mean, it's probably around 35, something like that, 40. So we, the space, given the space that we were given, we had to decide, how to make it work. Because it was really just an empty box, essentially. So we had to decide where the bars were going to go, where the restrooms would go, where the stairs would go. We added staircase. We changed a lot of, things, like we took out walls. We had to really try and figure out like how the flow would be in a space that was going to be brand new, because we didn't know how the natural flow for somebody who walked in the door, they're going to gravitate to the right or to the left, so we had to really think ahead and try and figure out how that would work. And the one thing that we knew for sure is that we had to have a circular rotation somewhere in the building. So that happens where you can go up the front stairs and then go to the back of the building, you can go down the back stairs and back through the bottom, or vice versa. So as long as we had that constant flow, we knew that it would be probably ideal for the group that we were trying to make it work for, if that makes sense.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So the front bar is a tavern and it's a restaurant, and it's more of a sports bar feel, but still has that sort of industrial look. And then we wanted a place that had unisex bathrooms. In this day and age, I think it's silly to make anything except for that. In Washington, D.C. now, all new building and construction, you have to have all unisex bathrooms. But in Baltimore, you still have to have at least one male bathroom, one female bathroom. So we have those upstairs, but our main bathroom is featured as an all unisex bathroom. It's for men, women, trans folks, and doesn't matter who you are. It makes everybody feel comfortable. And we've gotten really, really good feedback for that. And we're happy that it's worked out to the way that we thought it would. It also has the leather bar in the back. The leather bar, on Fridays and Saturdays, you have to be in leather fetish wear to get in. So we really try to preserve that leather culture. And we're actually about to expand the leather bar to add a second room with a pool table and maybe some other fun things that you might envision. And then we have the upstairs, which is Nest nightclub, and a leather shop as well. And then above the leather shop is an art gallery, which we celebrate. It's really the human form. Right now we have a male-centric show that deals with all male figure.
Right.
And we're currently celebrating that. But the Nest nightclub is, it's a space that we can do drag shows, and we can do burlesque, and we can do private events and gay weddings, and all the things that you really don't want to do downstairs in the Eagle per se, you can do upstairs. So it kind of gives us that license to say it's okay, because you're not doing drag in the Eagle, you're doing drag in Nest. You know what I mean? You're not doing burlesque women in the Eagle. You know what I mean? So that way everybody has their space and has a reason to use whatever the space is for. So you can use it and make it mold to whatever you need, essentially. So
I have to add. So when I visited here on like the first, I think it was like Friday night, I was like, it was a bunch of hot guys, everything was going on, it was nice, and I was like, all right, I'm going to the bathroom in the leather bar, and I was like, it's actually extremely beautiful and everything, and I have my own like partition of privacy. I was like, half excited, partially disappointed, but then actually like this is actually much more comfortable.
Right.
Actually, so.
Now, did you like the men's area, the urinal area?
I did. There's always it's a fun little. Oh my god, I can't.
You'll have to kind of come see that to know what we're talking about, but. we find that that's a really, obviously we modeled that after sort of like a European style bathrooms, which we found in Europe and loved, but we also wanted to, for those particular fetish boys, and we wanted to make sure that they had a space that they could still celebrate,
As we were also going back to, has there been an increase or a little bit of spillover into interest in leather by having these potentially different groups and spaces in such close proximity?
Yeah, so we've had an amazing response actually. The clubs, Command is one of the leather clubs here in Baltimore. They call this their home bar, and they're sort of our host bar. We allow all clubs to be part of us, but we figured we should have at least one host club in Baltimore to sort of be the welcome wagon, and have a monthly event so that, if people want to get into the leather community, they can always know to find the club here at a certain time. So Command's membership has almost doubled since the Eagle has opened. And I believe that the leather community is growing because we're here. I fully believe that. There are some parts of the leather community that I wish we were more involved in, but I think that there are some people that feel like we're already overrun by doing so much that they don't want to kind of overwork us. I don't know if that makes sense, but. Right. But there's other clubs too, and there's a group called the Secret Circle. They do an event here once a month, and they gather and they discuss everything from like BDSM or different types of kinks, or they do seminars and things like that. So they gather here once a month, and everybody's welcome. We have other clubs like Onyx, for example. Onyx is going to present their colors to us for the first time in September. Out of DC, which is really great. We're real honored to have that. And we have at least participation from, I think, almost 16 or 17 other clubs or organizations that have recognized us and have chosen to become part of us in essence. So when they present their colors, they can do fundraisers, they can do bar nights, they can do private events, they can do whatever they like here, because we want to make sure that they have some sort of ownership. I think the memorabilia that we have downstairs, it's funny, we worked really hard with what they preserved from the building prior, when the building was sold. The owners of the building, they did a good job of trying to keep that stuff and preserve it. We've taken it and we've displayed it, and we change it and we add more things to it, and we continually kind of sort of move things around. And there's a couple of people in the community that call us the TGI Fridays of leather bars, because we have everything on display. And I get a little irritated with that, just because we've worked hard to make sure that we've preserved that, and that's their history as well as ours. So so that kind of irritates me a little bit. Where we really try to make something different and fun and exciting, and yet people come in and they look at the display and they really do ask questions and they learn from our history. That history dates back to even before the first Eagle opened, before the 1991. So that's great when we see people that come in that, even straight people that take an interest in, oh, well, what is that vest for? Or what does that poster mean? Or why do you have this on display? And we actually get to tell them and educate them. It really opens their mind up, and it's a really great thing. I think it's very positive. But there's always going to be one or two people that, have to say something negative about what you're doing that's a positive thing. But it's unfortunate. We as leather people should always be building each other up.
I think it's fantastic. I like the idea of, I think especially like, starting out, and you're not necessarily, not everyone has access to necessarily find like a community of leather folk to connect with. So being able to see something that actually gives a scale of just how much the community is larger outside of you, that you actually, it gives you a sense of connectedness or anything to both the past and the present of what's going on now. I wanted to touch on too, I thought it was incredibly cool to also see, it looked like you also had some women's leather titles that were honored down there as well.
Absolutely.
So it seems that you also have a good presence with women's groups here too then.
We don't have as much of a presence as I would like. We sort of, it's kind of the running challenge. We talk to women a lot in the community, and we challenge them to bring an event here, and we will support it and even create it for them. But we don't get a lot of interaction with the women's community as much as we would like. Now we do host the Women's Mid-Atlantic Leather Competition, which we're honored to host that, and very, very pleased to be part of that. But that's one thing, and there's a couple other things here and there, but we would certainly entertain more of that, but we need people to step forward and help us. I'm not a woman, so I can't claim to know what they want, and sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. I can only claim to know what the male, or at least me, what I would want and what I think I would desire in an event. So we host a lot of that. But same thing with the trans folks. You know, we ran into a situation. I don't know. This is about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, and we were sort of called out as not being as being transphobic and not welcoming enough. And we thought, how is that possible? Because we've built bathrooms specifically to make that community feel comfortable, and we really. But then we had to learn. So if our perception is a certain way in the community, well, then it's up to us to change that, right? So it was all over this whole gas station issue across the street, and it was, you know, we sort of signed a petition to limit their hours of operation because there was a lot of drug dealing and things like that going on across the street. So they've closed the gas station from midnight until 5 a.m., which helps a lot. And because we signed that petition, we were told that we were transphobic, that we didn't view that as a safe space, and they viewed it as a safe space. Well, at least the leaders of the trans community viewed that as a safe space because it was lit at night. So, of course, you know, we had to go to meetings, and we had to, you know, learn more about why we had this perception about us and why people would call us out. And because, you know, I mean, essentially it's 3 white guys that own this business, and we didn't grow up in Baltimore. We grew up in, you know, I grew up in Wisconsin in a middle-class family, and, you know, Greg had the similar experience, and Bob had a similar experience. So we couldn't really connect with a lot of the people that lived here and what they went through and what they've dealt with and what they're currently dealing with. So we really had to get educated, and it was really important that we got educated. So I went to a seminar with Girl Complex. She was an IMSL from, I believe, 2017. And she was from Oakland, California, and she is a black, very strong African-American female, beautiful, beautiful woman. And she taught us in this seminar about, you know, intersex, and, you know, how she falls into that and what that means with her and her family and how she responds and how she grew up. And it was a lot about, you know, white privilege and, you know, how people of color deal with this, you know. So we had been opened up to this whole new world, in essence, about stuff that we've never really considered much thought about because we've never been faced with it before. So it forced us as owners to get involved and learn and understand who we are and what white privilege meant and where we came from and all these things that came out of that, which is a really great thing because now I can understand it. And the first time I was called a cisgender male asshole, and I literally picked up the phone and I was calling a couple of my friends. I'm like, what does cisgender mean? You know, like, I had no idea.
Speaking in terms of that, have you found, I guess, as things have, I'll say softly, it's been my observation as, you know, like, due to our political climate, it feels like a lot of us have been kind of pushed to extremes. And I felt like I've been a little bit worried that in the community in general, I think we're starting to lose the concept of pragmatism or having like an actual dialogue. I feel like we're all kind of pushing each other in the direction of like ideologies or anything afterwards. And so I kind of question if we're able to continue having like a beneficial dialogue without, you know, horribly offending each other.
Right. That's really, really true. There's so much going on right now about, like if you have a male event, and it's all geared, just for the males. And once in a while you'll get somebody that will call and they're like, wait, so this is for males only. And we're like, well, yeah, this particular event is for males, but the front bar is always open to everybody. The patio is for this particular event. And then they're okay with it, as long as we have something going on that people can take part of. But then you get, you get other things like, you have some people who are ignorant to the fact that you might want to have a people of color event that is going to be just people of color. I didn't understand what the need for that was until I got educated, and now I understand that. So if you have a POC event and they just want POC individuals there, and then you start to realize why, and you're like, well, because they want to share those particular experiences that are specific to their group and to their individual people. And because I can't really comprehend, something that, a male black person who grew up in inner city Baltimore and grew up poor, I can't put myself in their shoes because I've never been there. So I get it and I understand it, but there's a lot of ignorance to that. And so now the new thing is just being offended when anything is specific to one certain thing, right?
Right.
And I think it's wrong to not have events that are specific to anybody. You want to have events that are specific to everybody and be inclusive, but then you also want to have events that are specific to one specific thing, whether they're male or female or black or Asian or trans or whatever. There's a time and place for everything and anything, and I think people are just getting too offended. And as soon as they see that one thing is specifically just for one group, right away they're offended. And I don't think that that's wrong. I think that that's a good thing. I think men need to have male events, and women need to have women-only events, and black people need to have black-only events. I think it's important to us as humans and to our understanding and how we can relate to people from our own walk of life of how we grew up, compared to just everyone inclusively. So people need to stop getting offended about that.
Okay, and I completely understand and agree. I would say that, so then going forward for you and your partners and the Baltimore Eagle, what would you like to expand in? Is there anything on the horizon that you want to work towards or that you'd like to see develop here?
As in the community, yes. Baltimore, as far as bars go, and I'm specifically speaking only bars, I'm not speaking clubs. Bars, I think, we're lucky to have a great place, and we're blessed to have a great place. But Baltimore's really lacking when it comes to bars. You don't have a lot of choices, and we're the only leather bar. It'd be great to have a bear bar or another leather bar. I don't know if we could sustain that, but it would be great to see more of that, because there's no doubt that the leather community here is growing, and it is already very large. There's like 8 leather clubs or something like that here in Baltimore. On the East Coast, right in this region, within 3 states, there's like 15 or 20 clubs. So it's huge. And the other thing is that aside from the bars, there's not enough events that are getting people to connect. And I think that they don't have to involve the bars, but I think that people are so busy today in our lives, and we're missing that that sort of created socialistic environment that celebrates, leather or this or that or whatever. There's very few of that outside of the bars, very limited. And, unless I'm gonna hey, let's go to the beach, you know what I mean? But it's not a leather event. It's not a leather centric event. It's not a kink event. I think there needs to be more of that. And I think the bars can support that. Even though they're not being held here, I think that it's our responsibility to help that. And I think it's really important.
Okay. And so some times about bars, it's unfortunate when they do close down, and it does happen. It seems so more often lately with leather bars. In an example of at least one Eagle, the owner just didn't seem to want to continue doing it.
Right.
So can we get a pledge from you that the open sign will not be pried from your cold dead hands, or I mean, or is there a plan for it down the road? I know that's super in the future.
Yeah, it is. What we're doing is, I mean, we're super passionate about this. I mean, we have so many bills. We're not making money on this at all. I mean, I'm just being honest. Maybe down the road, when all the bills are paid off, which will be, you know, a few years down the road, then we may actually make a living at it. But I could go to a casino anywhere in the country and get a $60,000 a year job and be very content and happy. But I'm choosing to literally like make no money right now for the next couple of years of my life because I'm passionate about it. And the same thing with Greg. You know, I can't speak for Bob because I don't know what all of Bob's passion was, but I can speak for Greg and I, and this is truly our passion: events and making people happy and entertaining. We're constantly fighting to keep this alive.
I just wanted to also add that after being recently, transplanted to Baltimore, and definitely there's a little bit of, for my master and I feeling a little bit at first like, we're beginning. This place has immediately just felt like a sense of home and somewhere that it seems no matter whether it's, if you want to connect with a busy, wonderful, bouncing crowd, everyone that's just been accepting, or if you just want to go out onto the balcony and be like unpeopled out and just have a cigar and a martini, this place has been absolutely perfect for us. And I just have to say, it has been an absolute privilege talking to you. Thank you so much for being on Leather Mosaic. And is it okay if I have a big, nice bear?
Certainly, of course, I would love that. Thank you.